Hello everybody. In this video, we're going to be creating a quick HTML, JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript application. I want to showcase how traditional apps are created, how we can combine and have the HTML, the CSS, styling, and the JavaScript part all together in order to create an application itself. Now, some people call it websites, some people call it applications. For me, I think the line is directly what we are going to be doing. In this case, it's going to have a functionality other than showcase something. It's going to be working, doing some calculation probably. So for me, that belongs in the application side. And that's what I will focus on this course and in the whole semester itself. I want to guide you to create different applications. We're going to be using ViewFrame, the Vue framework, as we saw already on the syllabus. But before we actually go into those steps, I want to showcase how to do it manually. And next week we will recreate it in the framework itself, so you can see the actual benefits through that. So by this time, you already should have your npm node installed in your computer. You already should have your Cloudflare account created, so we can deploy the application itself. I will show that part too. And for now, let's actually get started. So before getting programming, I want to start doing something different too. I want to show a little bit what I want to do. And I was planning that traditionally, I always start like a to-do list. Probably it's a little simpler. I wanted to go a little bit more complex, just a little bit. And I think an expense splitter would be like a good thing to do. So I'm planning a really basic design. It's nothing much. Just a title with a subtitle on the top and a big card. We have different elements. It has two different forms together in line. And the expense splitter, what it will do is just pretty much what it says here, split expenses and see who owes what. In this particular case, Carlos paid $10 for sodas. That means that we spent $10 because we have two people there. That means that everyone should put $5 in order to pay for the 10. So you will see down here the little calculations that I wanted to showcase. Add up all the expenses to have the total expense. Divide the total expense by the number of people, so we can have how many split per person. And then have the calculation who paid what. So in this case, Jones owes the $5 and Carlos get the $5. That's how we will split in this case. Why? Because Carlos paid 10 for the sodas. And I want to make this dynamic. That means that it should be able to add a person. That person will be added on the people list. And at the same time, that will be added on in the drop down for the added expenses. And the added expenses will be added in the expenses. And then the last part, the summary and the totals, will be calculated automatically. And we're going to be doing this in HTML and JavaScript. And I think this the approach, like central, more or less, title, subtitle, a big card with two forms on the top and the information pretty much at the bottom. So let's get started. For that, I recommend to every project to have her own folder. I already have a project folder, so I will create here. Let's make the CITP for 360, the name of the class, probably is a good one. And now inside I can create the homework. Let's do O1 dash, and let's call it expenses splitter. And let's see. And I go to that particular folder. So I'm in the expense splitter folder. Now I was able to create it through here, but you can go and do it through your Explorer or your Finder, depending if you're using Windows or Mac, whatever is easier for you. I would recommend to get used to use the terminal. We will pass a long time doing things here. Now that I have my folder open and I create it, if I do a simple list, we can see that the folder is empty. We don't have anything there. to an L, nothing's there. So we can open with Visual Studio Code, just selecting code dot. That means we are giving the instruction to open Visual Studio Code in the current directory. At the end, to be sincere, you can use whatever text editor you want. I recommend to use Visual Studio Code to go through the process of the class. And that will pretty much open it. Or element. Let me just maximize this. And let me create, should be similar, but let me just create. This is just for me because I already have like several profiles. I will do a new one. And it's an empty one. And let's just open the class profile. So your Visual Studio should look like this a little bit more. Now the way that they create it now is we have on the left the folder open. Here will be the files that we'll be creating. In the middle will be the code. And on the right we have the chat for the AI elements that Visual Studio is using. Now we are not going to be using the AI elements on the Visual Studio Code, so I will recommend close that section. Even here in this little square we have the extensions, and you will see that by default we have GitHub Copilot, Copilot chat probably have it. I will disable those, and it has been to restart. Let me restart. Perfect, it's already disabled. So we will not be using the AI elements for this particular area for now. Okay, cool. This button is going to see the main page. So here we're going to create a new file. Let's call this index.html. Let's create the style.css and the application.javascript. Yes. So those are the three files that we'll be using in order to pull what we need to do. Other one to recommend to use in this particular case, let's install an extension here. Let's call live server. Open the one that has several millions downloads, and that will allow us to have a server locally that will render the HTML that we'll be creating, so we can see how are the changes happening. So let's just install that. Perfect, we can close it. And we have the live server is actually activated and improve it. That means that it just got installed. Cool. Let me just change the font size so you were able to see a little bit better. And I think that's a lot. Okay. So let's do a skeleton HTML. We know that we need to have the different brackets, different areas. The cool thing about Visual Studio Code is that I have emmet enabled. Emmet is a way to abbreviate different elements for HTML, and it just expand those. So if you do a simple exclamation point, you can see that there is an emmet abbreviation. If you click enter, it will generate a basic HTML page for you. We will keep everything as it is, device height and initial scale. This is just meta information for when you open your website in your cell phones. I will not go much detail, but keep it as it is. And then the title in the get section is pretty much the titles that we see on the top in every website. So let's call this expense splitter. And then on the body, let's do for now simple h1, and let's do a simple hello there. Okay. After we have that, we should be able to go live, and that will open your browser with the website. That's pretty, right? So I changed this. Let me add an exclamation point, and I save it. You will see that in browser it will automatically update it. But that's the idea, right? To have those elements there. So what I want to do at the moment is Probably we can open those in the same page. Let me see if I can do that. Exit full screen. You will be on the left. And exit full screen. You will be on the right. So probably we can see the changes live here. Let's make this a little bit bigger. More or less. Save. There you go. So you will see the website how it actually came together in what we need. So we were talking about making the expense splitter. So we need to create the different elements of the HTML site in order to create that section. So all this will be inside the body of our HTML site. So here in the body, let's change this section. And let's call a header section for a website. Here we have the title as an H1. Let's call expense splitter. And let's have, perfect. And let's have a paragraph probably. And let's put the text. So the paragraph will be split, expenses, and see who owes what. Pretty. Before we continue, let's link our styling because I want to start making some changes on how this actually looks like. So to link, relationship will be style sheet, reference. We should need to select the style CSS that we have in the current directory. Cool. And now we can make some changes on the styling. So I will do some of them that maybe doesn't make that much sense, but follow along. So there are different ways that the browsers handles default styling. As you can see here, I have Chrome open and Chrome selected a specific sizing on top of the title by default, and then a specific sizing between the title and the paragraph. And those could be arbitrary between browser and browser. Every browser have different rules about what needs to be done. You can see there's a little bit padding or margin on the left. It's not altogether tied to the website, to the border of the website, because there's some styling that is by default. So sometimes what we do is actually we reset those. Why? Because every browser have different rules. There is something called reset CSS or reset styling. So you can actually reset everything altogether. And we are not going to be using that much of those, but we can do some in general that in order to make this a little bit better. So I will say that for everything, my box sizing will be border box. This will make it better to handle the sizing of different elements. Let's say like that. And then we can say for my body, I want to have a margin 0. You can see when I save it, it went all to the left, right? So there's no extra spacing that I don't need. Cool. Let's do a background color pink, so you can see that background color, how it is a little bit. But let's wait it. Let's do mean height will be 100 vertical space VH. That means that will take pretty much at least the size of the screen. So we're just giving those sections. And let's do display grid. And we can say place items center. That's the best way and the minimal way to do it right now. To put something in the middle, just display grid and place the item center. It will try to make pretty much everything centered by the top and the left, right. So I think that start looking a little bit better. And then we can add in the rest of the elements. Let's add a little padding. Something not much, like 24 pixels. Let's change the font family. By default, give me like a bunch of those. Some of them probably are already installed on my computer. The one that I want to use, and it looks pretty much good across the board. Of course, we're going to be using better fonts later, but let's use the system UI. I will not select the Apple system because not everybody have that one. I will do, if not, the fallback will be sans serif. As you can see, it's a little more pleasant typography right now that we have, and I just have a typo here. Cool. After that, we can do background. Let's make a little color. That one is too white. We can do something like F2 FF. I already have it like selected, so you have like a little gray in the separation, and the text of the color is not to make that by default is black, so I will make a little more like a dark gray, so it's a little more pleasant to see. And I have one selected, 1F2937. So it's like the text a little dark gray. Perfect. Now that I have that, we can get back to our header. Let's make this a class and call it top. That way we can select it through CSS and give it a specific styling itself. And now because we have that top, we can just do that my top element. When you select a class, it's with a dot in the CSS file. Remember, we're just remembering those elements for previous classes. If not, I recommend you to go through the process about the basic styling, but a class is selected with a dot, an ID is selected with a pound. A tag or an element is just type in the element name itself. So in this case, I will do a top, and we'll do text align. Let's do center. Now expense splitter and the subtitle is actually good. Now let's do a margin button. About 16 pixels because I don't want the next element to be right away there. I want to do now that my main title, and I'm selecting my top H1. It's actually giving me, oh yeah, we need to fill it. Now we'll just do a margin 0. So it doesn't have that extra spacing that I had before. And for my top paragraph, that is pretty much the subtitle in this case, let's do a little margin. You make it a little smaller. And we can say that, let's change the opacity. We can change probably the color, but I will change the opacity to 70%, like all at 7. So you have like a different tone, like just to make things a little bit better. Cool. So I think we have the main basic for the first part. Let's go back to our index and let's build our card. And for that, I want to have a main element. And that main element will have a class of card. And that will be pretty much this card over here. Right? This card over here. And in this card, we should have different sections. We have a form. And without an action, just a form itself. That will be the form for the people. We have a second form. That will be the form for the expenses. And then we can have different sections. There will be a section for the list of people, a section for the expenses itself. We can have, and let's just copy this, a third section for the totals and the last section for the summary. So we have the different sections for the card. And let's start filling the card itself. So my form, I want this form to have an input element. It could be type text, by default, that's okay. And let's call this with a placeholder, and let's call the placeholder add person name. And let's close it. That's pretty much what we have here. Cool. And after that, we need to have a button called add person. Cool. For the other form will be something similar. We have an input, and let's call the placeholder to be expense description. Let's close it through here. We have a second input. The second input will be type number, and it will be as a placeholder, like the text that is transparent inside will be amount. And then we have a select element, and without name, we will put it the ID, and we keep it empty as it is, because we'll be adding the people in that element. So we know that the select element should have option, and we can value, I don't know, like John, and put John here, and we can repeat this over. We can have Carlos. That means that we can have in the drop down those particular name. Cool. And then let's copy over the button, and the button will say add expense. Cool. So those will be the different forms. We will be handling the elements a little bit later. I think let's actually start with that. So the first form, let's actually have some IDs, and that will be helpful when we do the JavaScript side, so we can select this. So this will be person form, and let's do a class row form. And this will have the ID of expense form, and the class for the styling will be a row form too. So we can have the same style in both forms, and let's start working with those. Cool. So here, pretty much, my row form, I want this to be display flex. Cool. I need a gap. Let's call this, I don't know, probably 10 pixels. So you give a little spacing. Cool. And let's do a margin button of 12 pixels. So one form is separated from the other one. Cool. Now we can make the elements grow. In this case, I want that every input and every select, that's pretty much all the elements that we need to type something. I will do flex 1. That will make it like take the whole space available. Cool. Let's just add some padding, probably 10 pixels. So it's a little grow it. Perfect. What else we can do here? We can probably make a border radius so it doesn't have like those sharp edges. Let's make it simple. I think it works. Cool. And let's just make a simple border. So instead of have that different color, let's actually specify I need a simple border of 1 pixel, will be solid. And the color, let's take this C7D2FE. Cool. Look at that little gray there, starts looking a little bit better. I like it. For the button, and that's actually will take for both button because we're not selecting one specifically, just making general. Let's make a padding too, and we'll make a padding of 10 pixel. That's white, x like left right, and 14 pixels top bottom. Right, you make it a little bit bigger. Cool. Let's do the same border radius, so it's rounded the same as the input. Okay. I don't like the border, so let's remove it. Border none. And let's make those like a bluish 4F46E5. Yeah, it works. But for now, we need to change the color of the text to white. We can do FFF. Nice. And you can see that the mouse doesn't change on top of it. I want to give it a specific, because it doesn't have an action, and that's okay, because we will handle that through JavaScript. I want to the cursor to be a pointer. So now you will see the little hand whenever you pass on top of that. And before we continue, it's a best practice like to, when you have one style inside the sheet, put the element from top to bottom the way that it is, and that's what we're doing. But I have not working on the card yet, and the card is after top and before the row. So let's actually go in the middle, or let's work on the card a little bit. And that's the main element that is surrounding and the forms and the list that will have at the bottom. So let's have some width here. Let's make a calculated width. That will be the minimal value of 600 pixels or the full size. What that means? If the screen is just smaller than 600, it will take the specific size. If not, it will not take the whole page itself. You can see there. So that's pretty much what you're defining, like a sizing, whatever is minimal. The 100%, if it's smaller, or 600 pixels, whatever is smaller. Cool. Let's do a background. Let's make it white. Let's add a padding. You can see here, we added the padding on the bottom of the form. We will put the list later, but yeah, we can see everything is together. Let's add a padding in general across it of probably 18 pixels. So we can see that border over there. Nice. Let's do the same border radius that we'll be doing. And this will be a little bit bigger. 16. Okay. Yes. And then after we have that, we can do a box shadow, and that's difficult to manage a little bit. Say nothing for left and top, but I want to 10 pixel on the bottom, then 24 pixel on the right, like the spread a little bit. Nice. And probably it's too dark, so let's do RGB A to have different colors, and let's do 79, 70, 209 at 20%. And that little gray, and so you can see like the car like it's on top of it, and that actually looks good. And those should be it for the card itself. Let's do now the work for different sections, and that work for both of the forms. So look at the sections. Let's call this the people section. So let's do a title. People. and let's have a list. And let's make it actually this class list, and we will handle the list somehow. And for every element we have here, let's do John, Carlos, right? So we have the list of the person there. Cool. The second section, let's separate those a little bit. This will be for the expenses. So let's do an H3 expenses, and let's have a similar list. Let's make it the same class so we can handle the list at the same time. Cool. And for this, I'm thinking we count different elements. So what we have here is description, amount, and person, like in one line. So we can do something like that. So let's actually copy this text. Let's put it here. Yeah, that makes sense. That we have some expenses. Cool. Let's do the total section. And let's copy the title. Let's put total there. And for total, we can do one big paragraph. And put a total spent. Let's do some strong here. And let's do, in this case, we spent $10. Then we can do a BR. BR is like a new line somehow. And we can do, oh, I have that extra line here. Perfect. And then we can do a split per person. Let's do strong, so we can emphasize that. And we're talking about that this should be $5, right? Total spend and a split per person. Cool. And then with summary, John owes 5 and Carlos gets 5. That's another list. So let's do an UL class list, and this list element, oops, let's do John owes $5. Another list element that says Carlos gets. It gets the word that we use? Yes. $5. Cool. Let's make the changes on the styling for those two different elements, and will be in particular for the sections and the list itself. So we go on the bottom because now we're going to be working with the section, and sections we have four different sections, and let's just make a simple margin tab of 16 pixels, probably should be enough. So every section has their space. If we remove this, I don't see the changes. If you don't see the changes, you can just refresh it and you should be able to see it. You just have like a little space there. And then we can do the section H3, the title that is inside the section. Let's make this one, remove some margin. It will be 0.06 pixel. And let's make it font size 14, make it a little smaller. And let's do color bluish like the buttons, a little bit less, but go with the styling for F4, 6, E5. So we have the different titles. Oh, let me get back here. I'm forgetting the title of this section. Summary. There you go. Okay. Now we can work on the list itself to make it a little more pleasant. And we can do that every list that we have. Let's remove the styling. So we go with the element style. I don't see it. Oh, it's list style. And let's do none. So we have the element will not have that little dot there. Cool. After that, let's remove padding. Let's remove margins. Okay, looks like text better. And let's do a simple display grid. Probably we'll do some changes on how those elements look like with a gap. So we can add the gap of 8 pixels. Okay, start looking a little bit better. All those listing. Cool. And then the every list element itself, like every line, we can do a little padding, 10 pixels, and I will show you why we're making the padding. Let's do simple border radius in order to have the same 10 pixels because of the pixels that we're taking inside, so it's consistent. Because I want to handle a little background, and we can use background color probably, but let's keep it as a black background, and let's do very light gray. F1, F5, FF. So we can have those elements like highlighted there. I like that how that actually looks. And let's make display flex. And every element inside we can do justify content space between. So if there's something in the middle, we can just maximize it or not. Actually, no, let's remove those. I think we don't need it. Let's keep it as it is. Cool. And the last thing, let's change this summary list. I want to change just the background of this one, but we are just every that is a list is already selected there. So what we can do is let's add a class here. So this is the summary. So we can say that the one that is summary list element. For those one, let's just change the background to be a little bit different. DCFCE7. So that's greenish. And let's make the text a little green too, so it goes with the background a little bit. Color, and let's do a greenish 166534. Cool. And I think that's it. I think it looks correct in a way. And that should be it. Now it's time to make this application actually work. So I will stop the video here. Let's go and see the second part in order that we can handle the JavaScript section. If you have any question or any doubt, don't hesitate to reach me. Happy coding, everybody.